Hi VC, it's that time of year again. It's Shelf Stacker's second annual Vinyl Awards show. Got about 22 categories to get through tonight, so buckle in and let's get started. Okay, first category tonight, we're going to start off with my favourite blind buy of the year. Blind buy, discovery, that kind of thing. And this was one that was completely new to me. I saw it in a record store at a very low price, just £5. Thought it was worth a punt. And it's LEF, which stands for, so read my notes, Lorenzo Esposito Fornaciari, who's an Italian musician, writer, producer. And the first thing to say is the artwork's pretty fantastic. That immediately grabbed my attention. The price certainly did. Like I said, it was £5. They didn't seem to know what they were selling. I forget what category it was in, but certainly not the category that this actually sounds like. I noticed on the back that Bill Laswell plays bass in this particular project, and I thought, well, it's got to be interesting if he's got involved in it, and it really is. It's kind of a cross between metal in places, progressive rock, electronica, and a little bit of horror soundtrack. So well worth £5, one you should check out. Next category is Rediscovery of the Year. So each year I find myself digging into the collection and pulling out stuff I haven't listened to for quite some time. Last year I think it was Stars, if I remember rightly. And this year I've been listening to a lot of this band, Trust. Maybe a new one for a few of you, but I was very familiar with these in the sort of early 1980s. They were about the only French hard rock band anyone in this country had heard of. And I love their stuff. It's very political, very social aware. Tracks like Antisocial and Paris is Still Burning are the highlights on this album. And a great hard rock, heavy metal band. And been digging into a lot of their back catalogue. Next is the award for Bargain of the Year. And there have been quite a few. I could have just chosen the thing I got the cheapest, and I've had quite a few buys for sort of 99 pence, which have been quite superb. But this is an album that is an all-time classic. And I managed to find a first pressing of Led Zeppelin 3 on the Plum label, the Atlantic Plum label there, with the Aleister Crowley Do What Thou Willst legends scratched into the run-out grooves. I got that in one of my local charity shops for £15. So I'm very, very pleased with that. I consider that quite a bargain. Next tonight we have the I've Got It At Last award, which is a fairly self-explanatory one, I guess. An album I've been after for a long time. I guess you could call this category the Grail category. And this is a record I've had to put up with just streaming it for a long time. But finally got myself an original UK pressing of Straight Up by Badfinger. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this album, or familiar with the band at least. It's got Baby Blue on it, which featured on, it's gone out of my head at the moment, but what was that programme? Breaking Bad, of course, is on Breaking Bad, and I think that found it a whole new audience. And it's a power pop classic. And this is a fantastic original copy of this. I mean, the condition is superb. You know, on the Apple label. So yeah, I didn't get this at a giveaway price, but at the same time it was a bargain. It really was. And when this crops up, it's so hard to find it in really good condition, but this is pristine, absolutely beautiful. Okay, moving on. We get to the upgrade category. And again, self-explanatory. This is a record I already owned. And I think for this category, I'm sticking to records that I own but are in poor condition. So that's the reason for upgrading. And this is Censor's second album, Asylum. My copy that I had of this jumped, skipped all over the place. And I love this record. Great band. They're part of that kind of dog on a rope type of a scene in the mid-90s that also featured people like Ozric Tentacles and Eat Static. So this is on the Ultimate label. They got lumped in with electronica and dance music, I suppose, but what I love about them is there's always guitars up to the max. And on this album, there are moments where it sounds like Steve Vai is playing guitar. He's not, but that's what it sounds like. Superb album. So glad to have upgraded that for just £6 as well. It doesn't turn up very often. Hard one to track down. It's not necessarily expensive when you do find it. It just isn't out there because it was a 90s release. Okay, and now we get on to changing from a reissue to an original. So again, it's an upgrade, but slightly more specific upgrade. It is just finally getting a hold of an OG copy. And to be honest, I was very happy with my reissue of this album. But when I saw this, an original on the Decca label of Satisfaction's first album, and saw that it was signed by all band members, I thought I had to have it. Very pleased that I do. Satisfaction, great album. Okay, the award now goes to the best coloured vinyl that I purchased this year just gone. And this could have been my discovery of the year. It wasn't a blind buy, but it could have been my discovery. And it's The All and Greetings from Planet Love. Now, The All was a pseudonym for Andrew Gold, who was a fairly middle-of-the-road sort of singer-songwriter in the 70s. And this album, even though it claims in the liner notes it's been recorded between August 1967 and August 1968, I think that's all just part of the bluff that's going on here, because this is a psychedelic pastiche, if you like, along the lines of the Dukes of Stratosphere or Utopia's Deface the Music, something like that. And Andrew Gold does a fantastic job. He really does. Parts of this are very heavily Beatles influenced, as you can kind of tell from the artwork, which has been updated for this reissue. I think this originally came out in the late 70s, early 80s, but this is a 2023 edition. So there you go. So there's Beatles type material on here. There's Beach Boys harmonies. There's even a track that sounds like The Doors with Jim Morrison. Great psychedelic pastiche. It's a double 10-inch, which is unusual in itself. Here's Andrew Gold. And that is what the vinyl looks like. So not only is it a beautiful looking piece of vinyl, but it's a fantastic listen. One of my best buys of the year, I'd say. I really need a glamorous assistant to hand me these, don't I? Should really be coming on a velvet cushion or something. It'll all sort out in the edit. Okay, next up, again, going for that aesthetic kind of theme, we have the best artwork on an album. So, of the albums I bought in 2023, this was my favourite artwork. Been after the record for a long time, Lightning. And to be honest, it's the artwork that always appealed to me the most. It's a good, I guess, rural hard rock album with some psych leanings. And as such, it's really good. But I've always loved that artwork. Just such a crisp bit of comic book art, really. Lightning. And of course, we have to have worst artwork to balance things out. And there was only really one contender for this. It's Black Label Society's Nuns and Roaches. I mean, yep, that is a nun holding a roach and saying, tasty little bastards. So it's what you'd expect from Zakk Wylde. Some decent hard rock, but what a terrible album sleeve. And now we come on to the award for Best Music Memorabilia. So not music in itself, but something linked to music. And I'm always picking stuff up. So it's quite tough to choose, but I went with this just because it's such an early promo photo, and it's The Who, Decca Records promo. And I guess that dates, judging by Roger Daltrey's hairstyle, from the late 60s. So very, very pleased to have that. Next category is my favourite music book that I purchased in 2023. Now this could be a music biography, and I read some really good ones. Could be a reference book, and it is a reference book. It's Scented Gardens of the Mind, and this is by Dag Erik Aj. I'll show it to you because I can't pronounce that. But this is a fantastic reference work. It's basically, as it says there, it's a guide to the golden era of progressive rock from 68 to 1980 in more than 20 European even countries. And they are the countries that it covers. And for someone like me who loves digging into prog from Eastern Europe, France, Italy, this is a absolutely fantastic find. Long out print. Again, this was a charity shop find. I forget what I paid for it. It's either £15 or £25. Either way, an absolute bargain. Certainly goes for a lot more than that online when it does turn up for sale. And it has entries for thousands of bands, and of course it has the obligatory colour plates with some particularly desirable albums on them. So, Book of the Year. Now we have the award for the best 12-inch single that I bought this year. And I don't buy many singles, but this is one I picked up as much as anything for nostalgia. I already had the 7-inch, which I can discard now, because now I've got a 12-inch Fanar with a picture sleeve. And it's Sarah Brightman and Hot Gossip, and I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper. This was one of the first singles I ever bought. Managed to get the 12 inch this year. Very, very happy to do so. It's just a great, cheesy, exploito disco tune that totally buys into the whole zeitgeist at the time, the whole Star Wars kind of thing that was going on in the UK. So, great cheesy tune. Why does someone always come to the door when I'm recording these things? Right, we're on to best 7-inch single that I picked up this year, and that would have to be Tigers of Pan Tang and Hellbound. Now, I had this single when I was a kid twice, and both copies had a fault, and I took them back and just got my money back. I got fed up with attempting to get a decent copy, and I picked this up this year, and it's perfect. And as well as the Hellbound single, like it says, it comes with an additional free 7-inch, which is the audition tapes that they used, I think, to get their deal with MCA Records. So very, very happy to have that. Okay, let's get onto the genre specific awards, and we'll start with prog rock. My favourite prog rock LP I bought this year. Again, very hard to choose, but I've had to go with Morse Code and their Le Marche des Hommes album. This is one that I picked up in Berlin. It was a blind buy at the time, and I'm so glad I've discovered this band. They're Canadian, I believe, sing in French, and this is an amazing album. I've talked about it in one of my previous videos, so go back and check out that Berlin video if you've not seen it. But yeah, I think without a doubt my favourite prog album of the year. Then on to Psychedelia. This is one I haven't shown before, I don't think. The Grodek Whipper Jenny, which from what I understand was the name of a car, an early car in the sort of 1920s or 30s. Great name for a band. And this is a fantastic album. Not particularly psychedelic sleeve on this album, but it's a very psychedelic album. It's I don't know who I could compare it to, but it's got pop psych sort of sensibilities, but it's pretty hard edged as well. And there's some really, really searing acid guitar on here. Don't hear this one talked about much, but this is just one of my favourite psychedelic albums I've ever heard, I think. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Okay, now PowerP is next up. And the award for Best Power Pop Album is definitely going to Van Duren. Well, it's probably going to Badfinger, but I've already shown them. So this is one I've been after for quite some time. Again, doesn't crop up that often, certainly in the UK, certainly around where I am. But yeah, this one's reputation had preceded it, and I just thought I had to track it down. And when I finally found a copy, and it was only £3 in, I think it's Flashback Records in East London. I thought, can't go wrong with that. A reason it's so cheap, I think, is because the sleeve is pretty tatty. But the disc is perfect, plays fantastically well. And this is a power pop classic. If you like your Emmett Rhodes and Paul McCartney, you will not go very far wrong with Van Duren, that's for sure. And so on to the heavy metal category. And again, there's some stiff competition this year, but really, it all came down to this album. Merciful Fate's Time album. And I love Merciful Fate, love King Diamond, and this is a particularly good album. The thing about Merciful Fate is they didn't seem to put out bad albums. All their later stuff is just as good as their earlier material. So if you want to know what this is like, well, listen to it. But the track you should check out is The Mad Arab, where it's really got some sort of Eastern scales going on. Fantastic, fantastic tune. So yeah, Merciful Fate. And then we get on to the best AOR or pump rock LP. And this was my favourite AOR pump rock pickup of the year, Brother Bait. I'd wanted this one for decades. And it's not a super expensive album. It just never comes up for sale in this country, apart from it did in 2023. So I leapt on it, and very happy I did. Definitely has some of those pump rock elements, the big overblown keyboard intros and that kind of thing, massive vocal harmonies, and yeah, very happy to finally have it. Then we get on to jazz, and again, some stiff competition, but it had to be this. Alphonse Mouzon's In Search of a Dream. And this is an amazing bit of jazz fusion. Alphonse, of course, plays the drums, but on here you've also got Miroslav Vitus on bass, and Joachim Kuhn, I think that may be how you pronounce his name, playing the keyboards, and Philip Catherine on guitar. And it's a fantastic, funky bit of fusion. Absolutely love it. And now we're on to Soundtrack of the Year. And the award goes to Sorcerer by Tangerine Dream. Now, I had to check out the film after getting this, because I'd never watched the film. And I enjoyed the film, but I must admit, I thought the soundtrack was a very strange choice for choice of music for the visuals that were going on. But it is a superb soundtrack. And getting on top of Tangerine Dream's back catalogue is quite an effort, because they released so many albums, but this is a really good one, and very much recommended. I love that still from the film. Then, seeing as this is an awards show, you've got to have the best album sung in a foreign language. And for me, it's this one, which was a blind buy and turned out to be a really good buy as well. The band is Dynasty Crisis, and they're French, and I had never heard of them before. And I guess it was a band photo that made me think it might be worth a punt, because otherwise I wouldn't have had a clue. And this is, I believe, a reissue of their first LP, I think. And it's pretty much the same, but I think a couple of tracks have been swapped out. And one of the tracks that didn't feature on the first album was the first track on here, which is Le Corbeau et le Renard. And it should have been on there because it's the best track on here. I mean, the whole album's great. It's that particular track, even though this came out in the early 70s, I forget what year exactly, it sounds like they're totally anticipating hip-hop and the sort of bass lines that people like Cypress Hill were using. It's an incredible piece of music. The rest of the album doesn't quite reach those heights, but it's a really good prog-leaning album with keyboards and flute and you name it. It's superb. So I think they did a couple of albums. So I'm going to have to find the other one. But Dynasty Crisis, wow, amazing stuff. And we get on to the grand finale, which is my favourite acquisition of the year. And I'm calling it acquisition because I've already talked about my favourite purchase of the year in the vinyl tag. So this was an album that's actually bought for me. So that's why it's not going to be Audio Slave here, although it could have been. It's going to be a record that was bought for me by some friends. And I've mentioned this before. Crownlands, Fearless. And I can't get enough of this album. I've been playing it constantly. And when I'm not spinning the vinyl, I'm playing it on Spotify in my car. It's basically their love letter to Rush, but the classic era of Rush, the 2112 era of Rush. And a lot of people have criticised it for being too derivative. But the more I listen to it, the more I hear Crownlands and less I hear Rush. Although I still hear a fair bit of Rush. Brilliant, brilliant album. Absolutely love it. I need to dig into their back catalogue and see what their other material is like. But this album has just been a joy to listen to all year. So there you have it. That is the 2023 Vinyl Awards. I'll be back soon with another video. Hope you enjoyed that one. Take care. Bye for now.